Welcome to Faithful, the podcast where we explore the intersection of leadership, faith, and impact. I'm your host, Christopher Swing, President and CEO of Vantage Surgical Solutions. Through thoughtful conversations with business leaders, missionaries, and changemakers, we uncover the principles that guide their work and connect them to timeless wisdom. In Season 1, we're diving into the foundational organizations and experiences that shape my own leadership journey. Whether you're a leader in business, faith, or your community, this conversation is packed with inspiration and practical wisdom. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovering how faith and leadership intersect in meaningful ways. Let's dive into the episode. Today, we have a really awesome opportunity to interact with someone who's very integral in my leadership journey, as well as just very important to me as an individual, and someone who I've been partnered with in the past and was the board chair and is the board chair. She was the CEO and founder of Vantage when I joined in 2012. Her leadership through the trials and tribulations was unmatched by any leader that I've been around in the history of all the different companies that I've worked for and industries I've worked in. I just am really excited to have her, not only to hear about her perspective on leadership, but also on the growth of a business, the transaction, what life is like after the transaction, and did that get her closer to her personal goals or further away, or did we get different goals? And so with that, Anne, welcome to Faithful.
Thank you, Chris. I think it's great what you're doing in terms of teaching leadership how to incorporate faith into their approach. I know when I finally embraced it, it was life-changing for me. So thanks for what you're doing.
So let's start at the beginning. You founded Vantage in 1990 and it officially opened for business, I think, in 1991. What inspired you to start this company? And, what were your vision in those days? I know what your vision is today, but what was it way back then?
So, as you know, I grew up in small town USA. And but then I had the opportunity to move to the big city. I went to school in Dallas, and then also my first job was in St. Louis. So was able to experience both the small town and the large town. And having come back to the area, wanted to try to bring high technology and medical solutions back to rural America. That was really the initial vision for the company.
That's awesome, because to be honest, it's not that much different than it is today. So today we're Vantage, standing for excellence, leading advanced healthcare solutions. And that doesn't sound that much different. Yes, we use a few different words, but I think it's in essence a continuation of what you had right from the very beginning. So in those early years, like when you first started Vantage, how did you ensure that we embodied all the things that you represent, or what represent you, in regards to like integrity and commitment and creativity and communication and excellence? Were there specific moments or initiatives that helped establish these as the foundation of the company's culture? And, when did that happen?
So, I think from the get-go, it's always you got to walk the talk. And so what you're preaching to your employees, your customers, you've got to carry through and do it yourself. So I think that was one of the first things in terms of integrity. And I think the other thing is just never give up. In our first year of business, Medicare decides to cut the rates of part of our services, which became part of our services, to 50%. And so our revenue went down 50%. And we then got our heads together and looked at different ways to continue to improve. So no matter what life throws at you, you figure out, hey, this is what it is, and how do we walk around this barrier, so to speak, or crawl over the barrier, however you want to look at it. And I think that, another thing that helped out a great deal was my father. He was a great role model for me. You'd bet on the jockey, or you bet on the jockey, not the horse, and then let them run with things. So as we grew as a business, giving more over to people that were better doing things than what I was or other people in our organization. And then also listening to the customer. What are their needs? We know we're meeting their needs in one area. What other needs do they have? And so that really was the success of Vantage. So we started off with one piece of equipment for one service. And today we provide a multitude of pieces of equipment, all the medical supplies that are used in the procedure, even the lens that goes into the eye. And then
Faithful is proudly sponsored by Vantage Surgical Solutions, where excellence meets innovation in advanced healthcare solutions. With a foundation built on integrity, creativity, and commitment, Vantage empowers leaders to shape the future, just as we explore leadership through faith on the podcast. Vantage Surgical Solutions, standing for excellence, leading advanced healthcare solutions.
Probably not the best decision that we made, but we then incorporated the micro instruments, which has been a pain in everybody's side, but we still provide it as an add-on service. So we constantly we're looking to expand how we can meet the customer's needs.
And for all of you, those of you who don't get the opportunity to sit in our board meetings, that's been a challenge that Anne has had for me for a while, and I still don't have a very good answer. So we're still providing micro instruments. So,
but one of the things I just want to add to, Chris, is that early on, this is where we had a crossroads on integrity, but we had a major competitor that was practicing unethical ways to attract and keep customers. And so we were faced with this, and we had to make it absolutely clear to our potential customers that this was not a practice that we were going to embrace. And we lost customers, our potential customers, and revenue as a result of it. So we grew probably, our competitor was growing. If they were doing double, we were doing half of that. And so we were okay with it. Our thought was we're going to grow this business in an ethical manner, no matter what our customers ask us to do, and we're going to follow the rules. And that hurt us as far as a growth, but it helped us in terms of letting everyone know this is who we are.
Yeah. And I mean, to be honest, we still struggle with that today. I mean, I still have the same scenarios where physicians are requesting reimbursements and ways to make money off of our services. And it's like, well, the government created very clear guidelines that that's not how this works. And, we've never deviated from that. And we're proud of that. I mean, I'm proud of that. I also think that, you've got to be willing to walk the walk when you're dealing with situations like that, because if you say that integrity is important and then the first chance you get, you make a left turn, then it's pretty clear to everyone that integrity is not really that important. And
and that gets tested, not just with competitors, but employees, customers, whatever. But you just got to stay the course. It was another thing my father used to say, is that the only thing you can take to the grave with you is your integrity. And that is so true.
Yeah, that's a great point. So starting a company is not a small feat, right? And you've experienced this a multitude of times. It requires vision and faith and resilience. And this is dirty pool because obviously I've got a lot of experience with Anne. And so I know the answer to the question, which is why I wrote it. But, give us a situation in which your faith was really tested, or maybe it's just your resolve was really tested. I mean, there's just a lot of challenging things that happen in business, and it's not. Anyways, just give us a situation that comes to mind, and maybe we can dig into that.
Yeah, first of all, your faith, your resilience is tested many, many times when you own your own business, and or for that matter, a career too. But, I would pray to God to just give me the resilience and the fortitude to stay strong and to stay in the fight. I prayed that pretty regularly, whether it was dealing with a disgruntled customer, whether it was dealing with a doctor who was challenging us to do things that we wasn't going to do, or even, I worked with my husband, and there was difficult times there too, but you just, you put your head down, you work through whatever life throws at you was what I ended up just embracing, but always went back to what are my priorities? It's faith, it's family, and then business. And though my children might argue that point a bit, it was really what I did in terms of keeping everything in check. But probably the most difficult one was, I started a number of businesses, not just Vantage, but as you know, the surgery center in Rolla, Missouri, and the billing company. And life was good. I was very successful as an entrepreneur. Then in my mid-40s, I partnered and we started a medical day spa. And then the 2008 market hit and we had to shut it down. So that was probably, from a business and personal point in my life, that was probably the lowest point. And I remember just getting to the end of my rope, and it was like, how much more can I deal with here? And I just gave it over to God and said, I give up. And things turned around. It was amazing. It was just amazing. I think it was His way of saying, we're going to do it my way from now on. It was good. Hard, but good.
Yeah, sometimes those are hard lessons to learn. But I mean, to your point though, like the way that you guys came out of that situation was phenomenal, and it resolved almost instantly.
Yeah, I mean, we thought it was going to take us down financially. I mean, all of this that I'd built up and had been successful with, and that we had built as far as Vantage, and we thought it was all going to be lost. And so when you get to that low and then able to climb out of it, it was just so powerful, so powerful. But I know I said I gave up, but I really didn't give up the fight. I gave it over to God, and He did some wonderful things for us, and I'm forever grateful.
So let's talk about Vantage a little bit. And for those people who don't know the history of Vantage, beyond obviously that it was started in 1990, and grew the business significantly. And then in 2021, we sold it to private equity. And so I want to ask her a few questions just regarding Vantage. And that was like, you've always had, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but you've always had crazy high expectations for yourself, for your team, for your organizations. I mean, and I don't feel like I'm misleading people. Do you agree? Like your expectations in general are probably above average, let's just say.
Yeah, always trying to look for the biggest opportunity, in any organization or person. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's just how, again, I go back to that's how I was raised.
It's a strength, that for sure.
Yeah, but I know some of the boards that I sit on now, I think I didn't ever look at it that way, but they sometimes, we're just looking to do this, and, don't look out 10 years. We just want to look out 3. And, but, that's my DNA, fortunately or unfortunately.
Yeah. So looking at through that lens, right? That's my question is, so do you feel like Vantage met or exceeded your expectations based upon where we were at the time when we transacted, or do you feel like we fell short?
Well, when we finally transacted with PE,
Mm-hmm.
far exceeded. I mean, if you go back to the services that the business that we were back in the 90s versus the business that we were in 2020, it's just amazing. And then the geographic area, honestly, I never envisioned that we would be able to grow it that much. I thought we could grow it more in the region and expand the services that way. But so, services as well as geographic expansion far exceeded my expectations and the value that we got as a result of that transaction. So it was a win-win-win.
So on the private equity transaction, how was that experience for you? What did it mean for the company and its mission? Maybe just a quick, would you do it again?
Yeah, would I do it again? I guess on those kind of things, I don't look back, but I probably would have done it differently. Would have put maybe a little bit more, in my mind, we turned it over, even though you were still involved. The whole goal that you and our shareholders decided that this is the right thing to do, is to allow us to get into other lines of surgical services. So in that regard, we met the overall goal. But in turning over the reins to the PE handpicked CEO, I think we could all agree, including the PE company, he was not the right fit for the company. And so it took us over a year to all come to that conclusion. And so as the listeners don't know this, but as a result of that experience, we then brought you back in as a CEO, which is what I wanted from the get-go. And I wish that in hindsight, I wish I would have pushed that harder. We increased our overhead costs significantly, and in many ways it was unnecessary. I understand the PE concept of bringing in more resources and investing. That's all well and great. But you also, I think, the lack of desire to learn who we were and how we did it, was disappointing. They kind of came in and their CEO just kind of ran his own course and executed. And the thing that and I'm not alone in this because I've got a number of friends that have sold to PEs, but they come in with a preconceived notion that they know more than what the company does. If I could change anything, I would, change that. There's some nuances to our business that they needed to understand. But with you now in the CEO role, which I said is something that I want in the very beginning, things are turning around. But, it will take us a bit longer. We had a little blip, but I'm totally confident now with you running it and Jason and the other key people that we have. I'm totally confident that, we're gonna do some great things. And so in that regard, we're back on track. But I sure wish we could have gotten that 1 year back. I think we would be so much further.
The one thing that I'll add to that, though, is I grew a lot in that 2-year period of time. And I think part of it was out of the struggle. And I think part of it was out of the realization that I wanted to be a different leader as I kind of continued forward. And so I don't know what it's one of those things where hindsight's 2020, but I don't know in this case if it is, because I don't know what it would have looked like. I think we would have continued down the path that we were in. I think the private equity firm would have been frustrated with the time to get to the growth curve that they wanted. I agree, we wouldn't have spent as much on the overhead stuff. So, but it's
But a lot of what they did is what you and I talked about, and that is we got to get a sales leader in there. Well, we got to invest in our sales team, as well as look at acquisitions to get into other areas. So, I think we're doing what we thought was best for the company. And so I think in the end you're going to do fantastic. But we need to. It's not gonna...
I don't know if there's too much that is. We'll be an overnight success, 30 years in the making, just like you always said. All of a sudden, one day, people are like, oh man, Vantage is awesome. They're this great company. And it's like, yeah, we just woke up one day and decided we were going to be that. And so that's where we're at.
But we're still a small business. I remember early days, somebody said to me, oh, and you're not anything until you make $1 million. And we made the $1 million. And it was like, okay, you're not anything until you make $5 million. Or we made the $5, so there's always that next. But I think, we've got to be very, very proud of what we built and who we are today.
Faithful is brought to you by Vantage Surgical Solutions, where we believe in progress through passion. If you're inspired by innovation and excellence in healthcare, we invite you to join our team. At Vantage, we're not just shaping the future of healthcare, we're empowering individuals to make a difference. Visit our careers page to explore opportunities and see if your journey aligns with ours. Vantage Surgical Solutions, where passion meets purpose. Yeah, for sure. So, talking about that transition, right? So what did that mean for you? You transitioned, part of the transaction was your exit as the primary leader of the organization. Even though I was the president and COO, you still were there heavily supporting me through the leadership of the company. So what happened once this transaction went through? What do you do that keeps you busy where I don't see you every day like I used to?
So I really went through two major transitions in Vantage. One was when you came on board, because you were hired to, a CFO first, but ultimately, you were my successor. to to let go of the day-to-day operations was probably the most difficult transition in my life, given that control is in my DNA. But it was one of the best things that happened to me. I think it allowed me more time to strategize and, look to the future and allow you to take care of the day-to-day headaches. And I found that I was happier because the day-to-day headaches, as you know, is all well and good, but it takes a lot out of you. So, it transitioned from, and then you were running it and I was involved, but more so as a, major issue, that we would work through. You would take care of the smaller day-to-day, you and Jason and the team. And, just to see you guys growing together, you guys did a great job. But I think that I got to a point where, okay, I'm not going anywhere. I can't do nothing. And so what do I enjoy most about business? And, even though I like the entrepreneurship and starting businesses at my age, I did not want to start another business, but I did want to be involved with growing existing businesses. And that's when the kind of aha moment was like, okay, well, what about board work? And I've been doing that. My dad put me on the first board when I was 16 years old at a construction company, one of the businesses my family owned, and really enjoyed that work. So I've been on board since I was that old. It did add a lot of value, obviously. But by the time I was 30, boardroom was a very comfortable environment for me. And so I just thought, that's one way that I can continue to be involved, continue to keep myself active is, and also stay on top of business issues. And so I pursued several boards, and now I'm on 3 other boards other than Vantage, and offering my experience. I've got a strong background in financial analysis, but more so growing businesses and the different ways that companies can look at that. Love the board work because it's more not getting into the details, as they say, nose in but fingers out. And I'm guiding but not leading, so to speak, the day-to-day. And then just sharing my network of both my expertise, but also people that I know that I've been in the various businesses. So it's probably the most rewarding work that I do today, because not only can I do that and stay active, but it's a way for me to pay it forward. Helping other businesses grow and be successful.
So I'm going to take a left turn here, and so sorry about that in advance, but you also do a lot of charitable work still. So,
yeah.
How does that, is that in that same avenue as just, you've been so blessed that you want to have the opportunity to give other people that same, or is it also, the other benefit is you've been very successful running lots of different organizations with lots of personalities and leaders. And there's just a lot of value that we can add to the local nonprofits by providing services. And I know you've done a lot of that lately.
Yeah, I think, again, I was asked to do that early in my career, and I view it as a way to give back to the community. But then the most recent one that I'm involved with is human trafficking, and that is just near and dear to my heart, just with what these children are going through. So, part of it is passion, part of it is giving back, but I just enjoy moving the ball forward, so to speak, trying to address the evils that exist in our world, as well as trying to grow businesses. And the other thing too that I've been involved with, I view this as nonprofit, is mentoring other entrepreneurs. And so I'm involved with the chamber program, where small business owners who want to grow, or somebody that's wanting to start a business, we help them, just be a guide for them and a sounding board. And I've been working with 3 different entrepreneurs, just helping them grow as individuals as well as grow their business.
That's cool. So transitioning to the role of board chair, you step back from the day-to-day operations, and, it's different, right? And I think you were hitting on it, that it's a different position to be the guide, not necessarily the leader that's doing all this. Is it similar to being a consultant, or how do you look at that role as, say, a board chair or even just a director on a board comparative to the CEO? Because they're definitely dramatically different
Yeah,
roles.
it's interesting. I was just in a board call yesterday, and the CEO said, "Hey, don't bring your board hat. Don't wear your board hat. Wear your consulting hat." And my comment back to him is, I don't think you want me to be wearing a consulting hat, because a consultant is a little bit more pushy, I'll say. We always try to sell it, but to me, a consultant is like, okay, here's the game plan. Here's what you need to do. I'll lay it all out and do more leading. But where I find as a board, sometimes we have to plant a seed and we water, water, water. I mean, sometimes it takes a while to move a board ship in the direction that maybe needs to go. And so I find that I still do the same things, offer my advice, but it's maybe sent out more as a softball as opposed to a hardball, I'll say. And then I just continue to ask challenging questions to try to promote what I think should be the way to go. And I will do that until I'm told, no, we're not doing that. I've yet to be told that. They're always like, okay, look, we do need to think about that. But yeah, I am big on, looking at the overall, what's best in the shareholder interest for this company.
Do you think that a little bit of the difference is, as directors, at least on my really effective boards, like we come without an agenda, and the consultants always want you to be excited about whatever it is that they're proposing, because they're hoping that you guys grab a hold of it and then they've got 3 or 4 more gigs that they'll get out of the organization at some point in time in the future. Whereas really, I feel like as board members, we're there to step back and say, are we getting closer to our goals and objectives? Are our goals and objectives still relevant? Do we have the right players on the team? And not from, hey, we're trying to tell the CEO he needs to hire these different people. But some of the instances that I see are, we have a CEO who is trying to do more than their share of the work, and therefore the knowledge transfer isn't happening. And so that's great. I mean, the CEO is phenomenal, and he's twice as effective, as maybe 4 times as effective as the next closest person. But you really need that continuation, that transition of knowledge. And you also need really high quality, motivated people that'll step up and, add their flair and their perspective and, not so much just a one person perspective.
Yeah, because I mean, as you know, sitting on boards now, it's interesting. As a CEO, sitting on a board as a CEO, I think is so powerful, because you know what it's like to have your head down, focusing on just getting through the day sometimes getting through the week or the month. But as a board, you don't have that. You can look broader. And I think that, and we also, I think you and I probably relate better to the CEO because we've been in their position. And the last thing I want to do is second guess the CEO. I just want to challenge him. I don't want to second guess him. And I've been in boardrooms where they are second guessing, and that's just not, it's a defensive mode as opposed to a collaborative mode. And so I always try to approach it in a way that, okay, if I was receiving this message, how would I want to hear it? And so I think it's so powerful for you and I both have been on both sides. And the Vantage board before Verrills took it over, it was a family board, and not nearly to the extent of what you're dealing with now as a PE board. But in the same way, it allowed us the opportunity we always had the discipline that we're going to have a board meeting, because it allowed us to look broader as opposed to, getting into the weeds and looking at the day to day. We need to look out 3 to 5 years and where are we heading the ship, so to speak.
Well, I think those are the steps, right, that a lot of companies skip, because they're like, well, we are the shareholders.
Yeah.
But I think what you just said was really important, and that is that, yes, we are the shareholders, but it's not the operational decision process that you're going through every day. This is like, aggregate the data. Statistically, are you moving in the direction that you want to go or not? And I think there's a lot of value to that, and a lot of people skip it over, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then also what I find fascinating is in boards, the issues that we are dealing with today versus the issues that we dealt with 20 years ago. I mean, this cybersecurity, which is somewhat scary, but then the AI that is exciting and in both in technology, and we never would have broached those topics before, and yet we need to start thinking about how that's going to impact us long term. And then ESG and just all of the new things that boards have to address that I don't think you and I would have ever anticipated.
Yeah, and for all of you ESG investors out there, we put at least 4 hybrid vehicles into service this year at Vantage. So, congratulations to us. We're slowly but surely conforming to strategy around sustainability, which is it's dumb that I fought it for this long, but and I don't say that like there were other vehicles, but like it was the first time that we went into the process going, we should probably have some sort of a strategy around how do we reduce the amount of fuel that we're consuming? How do we look at the cost all encompassing, inclusive of the fuel side of things and the depreciation, et cetera.
Yeah.
So tell me, before we wrap up kind of this private equity side of it, because I kind of jumping all over the place, what's the one thing that you're most proud of? Like, as you look back through your Vantage years, and I remember you telling stories about the very first laser you bought and the start of that process. Those things don't, believe it or not, we actually listen. We did hear you when you would tell that story about breaking the warranty seal on the laser, the very first acquisition. Immediately after buying this $50,000 laser, you guys are avoiding the warranty. But what are you most proud of, through that history?
I think as a young entrepreneur, your goal is to be most proud of building your assets. But I found over time, my proudest moments and achievements were growing people. And you look at how much Jason, started off as a technician for us. Dennis started off as a
Yeah.
technician and
Oh,
then became
man.
our best salesman.
Yeah.
But just seeing how they grew in the organization, Jason or Janice and Brenda, that, and then I think also just helping others achieve their greatest potential.
Yeah.
That has over time really been where my focus is. If we see somebody that, and you and I have talked about this, I'm not going to name names, but this person's got it. And you can see it in the way in which they interact with us, and the way in which they think about things, the way in which they solve problems. I mean, we're really looking for people who can solve problems for us. That's what business is all about. And moving us from point A to point B. And so, to be able to be able to hire those people, to be able to identify the potential past what they might think they could do, and then put them in roles where they can prove it to themselves. That's rewarding.
So, the faith has obviously been a cornerstone of your leadership journey. I know it's not always the very first thing that we think about when we think about leadership, but I've always associated one of the benefits that we have being in Central Illinois is that there are way more people of faith here than not. And so I think we've had the benefit of that. And I feel like our culture in our organization is that. And one of the things that has become like the fad today is calling out organizations who call themselves families. And I'm just going to be honest, like we've always believed ourselves to be families, but I think the problem is they just have a warped sense of what a family is. Because in the Midwest, at least, family doesn't mean like we have no accountability for our actions. Family doesn't mean that we show up and do as little as possible and disappear because we're part of the family. I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, you've probably seen it too, because it's everywhere now, where it's like, I think the one that sticks out the most to me is the Netflix statement about, we're a professional basketball team or a professional sports team. We're not a family. And I'm like, okay, like call yourself whatever you want to, but don't hate on me because I say that we're a family still. So
Yeah.
what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I remember being challenged by that probably, what, 5, 7 years ago?
Yeah.
Because we've always viewed it as family. I mean, we're a family business. It starts with, all the shareholders are family members, and being in small business since, my father had several small businesses, and it was always viewed as family. To me, that was just a given. But I think it's also the top strength of small businesses is that we do view employees as family. I think the other thing that I was raised in the philosophy that you treat others like you want to be treated. To me, that's, embrace. And family teaches you that probably
Yeah.
more so than anything. Family teaches you how to treat one another. They teach you how to negotiate. It's amazing. And so to bring over the family aspect into the business environment, I think is powerful. Whether you call it family or team, it's the culture of being together, of working in unison as opposed to being divided. I've been on both sides of the fence in this in terms of being viewed as a number, an employee, versus being viewed as a team. And in particular, one of the boards that I sit on, and I think they have over 3,000 employees still. I mean, their culture is family, and they stress that to no end. And I think that that's, to me, the golden rule is the best compass that guides me in probably the best decision for a company, our family, to live by that and to embrace the business aspect of things, because then you think twice about doing things. If it goes back, Chris, to how we built the company in the very beginning, to get our technicians to want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and be there and work some long hours, is that why don't we all just think of every surgery that we do, that's our grandmother on the table. And when we started incorporating that into the training process for our technicians, it was a game changer, because it's all in how you perceive everything. It's all in how that person that's across the desk from me that's not maybe doing their job. Maybe it's more than just being obstinate. Maybe they've got something going on in their life that, they need to share. Treating people like that, I think, has built the business that we have today, has built the culture that we have today.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll add to that is, maybe it's a failure on my part to feel like we're a family, but I can tell you that there aren't too many sports teams when somebody's family's not well or whatever, that they're spending entire lots of time trying to figure out how do we get them back to experience that. I mean, I remember we had an employee whose dad was identified that he would probably lose his life within 24 hours. He was like 7 hours away. I was trying to figure out how to drop a private jet in to pick the guy up.
Yeah.
Going, I don't care what it costs. Like, it's not about that to me. It's the unfortunate situation that we assigned him 7 hours from here, and now we've got this call, and how do we deal with it? And that didn't work out either. We figured out we were adding time, and the amount of risk with weather and things like that in order to get him picked up wasn't going to help him. But, we spent like almost an entire day just trying to figure out how to make sure that we gave him every chance to be back with his family before.
Yeah, I think about some of the issues that, we always would try to help them solve their family problems, whether it was loaning them money, whether it was giving them points. I remember that whole process that you did, gave the hotel points so that they could go out and take care of a family issue. It's just that kind of stuff that you would do for your family members. Why not do it for your employees?
And I think the other side of that is like, yes, I mean, we want to be important to them, but like, we want them to know that we came from the right place when we're dealing with this stuff. That doesn't mean we don't hold people accountable. I mean, you know as well as I do, like, we've unfortunately had to hold a lot of people accountable, but it's not out of spite. It's out of love for them as a person and this organization as an organization. And, you still have to make those separations at times and coaching, et cetera. But we do it in a way where they feel like they can bounce from that situation.
Yeah.
And, I've got like a list of them, just crazy the things that we've had to go through over the years together, but I feel like we always had the integrity. We always had the right interests, of not only the employee, but also the organization as a whole. And, even families have to discipline kids or parts of the family when they, choose to act inappropriately. So.
Yeah, and I think too, another thing that we did right in trying to show our new hires culture was bringing them into Effingham and getting trained in Effingham. That let them see firsthand what we were all about. And hopefully we're continuing to do that. But I think that is such an important process because it weeds out those that don't feel comfortable with family environments. And that's okay. But, we want to continue to encourage that and let them see how we do that as a business.
Yeah, and what Anne's referring to there is we operate in like 23, 25 states, something like that. And so because they're almost all remote, it's really easy to feel like you're on an island by yourself and then realizing that there's some connection with the organization that's behind them. So tell me, for people who are listening, what do you hope that they take away from your story? Or maybe even the people that are on your boards, like, what do you want them to see as daters? Like, what do you hope that they get from you?
I think with this podcast, I think, obviously the first thing is just believe in God and have Him in your day-to-day living. I think that I think the other thing that I had to learn is be patient with God's process. What I thought was going to take 10 years to build Vantage took twice as long. But in that process, worked with a lot of great people, built lasting relations, and don't regret having to go that 20, 30 years, whatever it took, because ultimately it's the process, it's not the end point. And so I think the other thing too is that a takeaway is, as far as my board, I try to incorporate things about faith and God. Some are received well, some not so much. In today's environment, you just never know, but I'm not going to be quiet. So for those who are faith-based, I would encourage you to be outspoken and not apologetic, because I just believe it's so important that we maintain our Christian country, I'll say, and continue to promote and believe in how we were raised, how our parents were raised, how our parents' were raised. I mean, this is where we are today is because of that Christian base. But I think last thing would be that when all else fails with our human approach, give it over to God and see what happens. And that was my experience. It was a wonderful experience and everything turned out great, not without the bumps and bruises. You always have that no matter what, but giving it over to God and seeing what can happen is just amazing.
So one of the greatest gifts that you gave to me is the importance of your network, of a person's network.
Yeah.
And then the subsequent experience with that is like, Anne has so many contacts in her Outlook that it's really hard for Outlook to even function. And so there are challenges that come across with having an insane network. But here's what's crazy is if you've interacted in a significant way in any time in, I don't know, maybe even as far back as maybe when you're at SMU, I don't know when your contacts really started to build, but Anne has those contacts. Like, she keeps track of the people that she worked with or connected with along the way. And so if I ran across something where I'm like, hey, I really need to get a hold of this person, Anne was that person that I would always go to say, hey, do you know how to get a hold of this person? Or, who is somebody that we know that would be connected to this person that we need to get a hold of? And that's one of the blessings that I continue to have. And I feel like as part of being a YPO member now, like, that's really been something that's inspired me to continue to grow my connections and to figure out, like, I was trying to get a hold of a CEO of a publicly traded company the other day. And as most people know, that's not the easiest thing to do. So I reached out to a couple of my contacts and said, hey, who knows this guy? And they sent me a message within 24 hours. Here's his cell phone number. Let me know if you need anything else. And so it's like, that's the difference in how that's how I do business now comparative to, when I got here, that that wasn't really that important. I was from a big company, after being in a small one, and that was just never that important. But I sure appreciate that gift that you gave me. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. This has been an incredible journey. For those of you who didn't see it, Anne has been a significant impact in my life, both personally and professionally. We've had great celebrations and we've had great struggles together. And I think that's how you truly know who's in your corner. And I've always been blessed to have a response from Anne anytime that I need somebody to guide me into what steps I should be taking next, or how I should focus on resolving an issue. She's always been extremely invaluable in that sense. And I appreciate that, Anne, and what you and Dennis and pretty much everybody here, even in FEM, have done for me over the years. As a transplant, you never really know how that works. And at some point along the way, I ended up being the chair of the chamber and all kinds of stuff here. So as a matter of fact, I didn't win a 20 under 40 in Coles County where I'm from, but I did in Effingham. So go figure. It's crazy how life works that way, but I'm sure thankful for everything that you've helped me to grow into, your faith in me, your continued investment alongside of me, and just the valuable relationship that our families have had and will have indefinitely.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed this. This was a great experience for me. It's super important. That's why it's officially episode number 1 and will be released as a 3-part series, primarily because I couldn't figure out which one to release. I picked Anne as my very first episode because she's been probably the most impactful in my leadership journey, but at the same time, I have 2 amazing missions that I want you guys all to know about. And also, Anne was talking about her human trafficking organization here in Effingham, which is I-57, right? And
yeah, I-57 task force, yes.
Yeah. So if you want to give a blessing to Anne or to me, feel free to support any of those organizations. We are super engaged in all of them and grateful for the work that they're doing and the impact that they're having on our community. So with that, see you all soon.